Let me talk to the person who's been walking through life like it's a maze instead of a mission. You're standing there staring at 100 doors, anxious about which one to knock on, terrified of picking the wrong one, worried about what's behind it, failure, rejection, pain. But I came to tell you something. God already chose your doors. You've been praying like God's still deciding. You've been fasting like you have to convince Him. You've been crying out like heaven's still in a boardroom trying to figure out whether or not you're worth the breakthrough. But let me flip the script on you. God already made up His mind. What you call a mystery, heaven calls a memory. It's already done in the mind of God. The provision you've been stressing over, the opportunity you've been begging for, the breakthrough you've been fasting for, it's not up in the air, it's locked in the vault. God doesn't operate on maybe. He doesn't scroll through resumes. He doesn't consult your mistakes. He doesn't set His plan based on your timeline. God speaks in finished sentences. He declares the end from the beginning. That means while you're still trying to find your starting line, God's already written your finish. Think about it. In Genesis, before God ever formed Adam, He planted the garden. That's provision. The man didn't have to create his environment. He just had to walk into it. The fruit was already there. The rivers were already flowing. The gold was already in the ground. Provision was pre-decided. You're stressing like you've got to build the garden when God already planted it. You're working like you've got to earn the door when God already assigned it. You think you're chasing after something new, but you're actually walking into something ancient. You're stepping into a decision that predates your dilemma. And I get it. Sometimes it feels like God is late. Sometimes it feels like provision is hiding. But what if it's not hiding? What if it's waiting? Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for the right maturity. Waiting for the right mindset to match the miracle. You think God's holding out on you, but what if He's holding it for you? Because some of the things you've been praying for would have crushed you if they had come too soon. Some doors would have distracted you. Some blessings would have buried you. And God, in His mercy, didn't deliver it when you want it, but He's still going to deliver it on time. The provision is not just about getting something. It's about becoming someone. It's not just about the blessing. It's about the preparation. Because God's not just working on the door. He's working on you so that when you walk through it, you don't sabotage what He gave you. You don't have to worry like you're on your own. You don't have to pray like you're trying to wake up a sleeping God. He's already seen the need. He already factored in the loss. He already calculated the detour. He already knew about the diagnosis. He already anticipated the setback. And He still made provision. You thought the layoff surprised Him? You thought the heartbreak caught Him off guard? You thought the anxiety disqualified you. You thought the detour canceled your destiny? Not even close. God saw it. He planned for it. He made a way through it. The Bible says in Exodus 16 that when the Israelites were in the wilderness, God rained down manna from heaven. But catch this. It only came after they left Egypt. Why? Because They didn't need supernatural provision in slavery. They needed it in freedom. Some of you are crying because the provision isn't where you used to be. It's because God already moved it to where you're going. The provision you're praying for doesn't exist in the comfort zone you're clinging to. It exists in the step of obedience you haven't taken yet. That's why God told Abraham, go to the land I will show you, not I'll show you then you go. No, because the provision was attached to the move. It was pre-decided, but not pre-revealed. You want the map. God gives you the moment. You want the details. God gives you direction. You want control. God gives you calling. So maybe the real question isn't, will God provide? The question is, will you walk like He already has? Because until you believe the provision is pre-decided, you'll keep living like it's up for grabs. You'll keep chasing things He already sent. You'll keep begging for doors He already opened. You'll keep waiting for a yes that's already written in the blood of Jesus. This is not a guessing game. This is a God who goes before you. A God who is never surprised. A God who prepares a table in the presence of your enemies, not in their absence. That's how sure He is. That's how complete He is. There's a lie that's been whispering in your ear telling you that if you just worry enough, if you just stress harder, if you just think through every possibility, you'll somehow control the outcome. Like worry is the key that will unlock your future, like anxiety is the fuel that powers your breakthrough. But let me tell you something. Worry doesn't open doors. Faith does. Think about it. Worry is like spinning your wheels in mud. It looks like effort, but it gets you nowhere. You can pace the floor, toss and turn, run through every worst case scenario in your head, and what happens? Nothing changes. The door stays shut. The opportunity stays distant. The problem stays the problem. Because worry is a thief. It steals your peace, your focus, your energy, and gives you nothing in return. The Bible says in Matthew 6:27, who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Not one. And yet worry is the default for so many. It's the background noise in the mind of the dreamer. The secret fear behind the prayers. But here's the truth. You cannot worry your way into a miracle. You cannot stress your way into success. You cannot fear your way. If worry worked, we'd all be living the life we want by now. But worry only builds walls. Walls of doubt. Walls of fear. Walls that keep you from stepping forward. Doors don't respond to worry. They respond to faith. Doors open when you trust God's timing, not when you try to force it. Doors swing wide open when you believe God's promises more than your problem. Now, faith is not some vague feeling or blind optimism. Faith is confidence in what you hope for and assurance about what you do not see. It's stepping out even when the path is unclear. It's walking through the valley of the shadow of death without turning back. Faith moves before you see the door open. Remember Peter when he stepped out of the boat? The wind was howling, the waves were raging, and everyone else was terrified. But Peter's faith told him to step forward. His faith said, I'm walking on water because Jesus told me to. It was faith, not fear, that opened that moment. Worry would have kept Peter anchored in the boat, stuck in his comfort zone, afraid of the unknown. But faith is what made the impossible possible. When you worry, you're holding on to what you see. Your circumstances, your failures, your doubts. But faith looks beyond the seen and reaches for the unseen. Faith trusts the voice of God over the noise of the enemy. Faith says, even though I can't see the whole staircase, I'm taking the first step anyway. Doors are not opened by your logic or your hustle. Doors are opened by a supernatural power that moves when you release control and put your trust in God. You can plan, you can prepare, you can pray. And then you have to walk by faith, not by sight. Because if you wait until you feel ready, until every fear is gone, until every worry is erased, you might never move. Faith also requires patience. It understands that sometimes the door isn't open yet because God is doing something inside of you. He's shaping your character, strengthening your spirit, building your trust. Worry wants an immediate answer, an instant fix, but faith waits quietly in the tension, knowing that God's timing is perfect. And here's the kicker. Worry is exhausting. It drains your energy, your joy, your ability to act. Faith, on the other hand, energizes you. Faith gives you boldness to knock, confidence to step forward, peace to rest in the process. When you choose faith, you don't just open doors, you open yourself up to the power of God working through you. I want you to imagine what your life would look like if you stopped worrying about the doors you can't control and started stepping boldly through the ones God's already opened. How much weight would be lifted off your shoulders? How much freedom would flood your spirit? Worry chains you to anxiety and fear. Faith sets you free to move, to grow, to receive what God has prepared. It's easy to say have faith, but it's another thing to live it when the odds seem stacked against you. That's where faith becomes a choice, not just a feeling. You have to choose faith every day. Choose to believe that God's got your back when the door seems locked. Choose to trust His plan when the way is unclear. Choose to believe that even in the waiting, something is working behind the scenes. And sometimes faith means knocking repeatedly. It means perseverance. It means showing up even when it feels like the door won't open. Because doors often open after persistent faith, not after passive worry. You can't wait for perfect circumstances. You can't wait for fear to disappear. You have to knock with confidence, knowing that the one who chose the doors is faithful to open them. Worry wants to steal your moment. Worry wants to keep you frozen in fear, stuck in a place of what if. But faith moves you forward. Faith says, I'm not defined by my doubts. I'm defined by the God who has already chosen my doors. Faith sees the closed door not as a dead end, but as a not yet. Faith presses in, knocks again, steps out, and believes the door will open. There's something about a closed door that feels like the end of the road. It feels like rejection, failure, missed opportunity, a dead end. You knock, you try, you pray, and the door just doesn't budge. And your first instinct is to panic. You think, God, what's going on? Why is this door closed? Am I off track? But what if I told you that closed doors are not just obstacles, they are divine direction. When God closes a door, He's not punishing you or shutting you out. He's redirecting you. He's steering you away from what could have been harm disguised as blessing. He's guiding you towards something greater than you could have imagined on your own. Closed doors are sometimes God's way of saying, not this way, not now. Trust me to lead you. Think about Joseph in the Bible. His door was slammed shut over and over again, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison. Each door was closed to what he thought was his path. But those closed doors were divine detours that led him to a throne. If Joseph had pressed through those closed doors in his own strength, he would have missed the God-ordained promotion waiting for him. Closed doors keep you from walking into traps. They protect you from people who aren't meant for your journey, from plans that would derail your destiny. God's no is not just a refusal, it's a reroute. The closed door is a signpost pointing you in a different direction, and that direction is always toward His best for you. Sometimes we think the door we want is the only door. We get so focused on one specific outcome that we miss the bigger picture God is painting. Closed doors force us to look around, to seek His guidance, to wait on His timing. It's in that waiting and seeking that we develop patience, resilience, and trust. The Apostle Paul experienced closed doors too. He tried to go to certain places to preach the gospel, but was prevented. He didn't argue or force his way through. He listened and obeyed the Spirit's redirection. And through those closed doors, the gospel spread in ways he couldn't have planned. Sometimes God's redirection is bigger than our vision. A closed door can also be a test of your faith. It's easy to trust God when everything's going your way. But when the door closes, when the path is blocked, that's when faith is really tested. Will you give up? Will you become bitter? Or will you lean into God's wisdom, believing that He knows what you don't yet see? Every closed door is an opportunity to trust God more deeply. It's an invitation to surrender control and say, I don't understand this, but I trust you. When you do, you align yourself with His perfect plan. Closed doors keep you in the waiting room for the right timing, the right season, the right opportunity. Have you ever been so fixated on getting through one door that you failed to notice the window got opened somewhere else? Closed doors sharpen your spiritual eyesight. They force you to rely less on your own understanding and more on God's guidance. Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Closed doors remind us of this truth. Sometimes the pain of a closed door is God's way of redirecting your heart, your character, your purpose. He's pruning what doesn't belong so that what remains can flourish. Closed doors are part of your refining process. They prepare you for the next level of your journey by teaching you perseverance, humility, and trust. You might be tempted to knock harder, to try to break the door down, but divine direction means sometimes knowing when to stop knocking. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is stepping back, turning around, and looking for where God is leading next. That takes courage, because it means releasing what you thought you wanted and embracing what God knows you need. Closed Closed doors are not God's way of shutting off your destiny. They're His way of protecting your destiny. They're His way of saying, I'm still working behind the scenes. I have a better plan. When you see a closed door, don't see defeat, see divine direction. Don't see rejection, see redirection. Don't see a block, see a blessing in disguise. In fact, many of God's greatest plans are revealed to us not at the open door, but during the closed door season. It's in that waiting, that uncertainty, that you grow, that you learn, that your faith is stretched and strengthened. Closed doors teach you to be patient, to be prayerful, to be persistent. Not in trying to open the door, but in trusting the one who holds the key. If you could see the whole map, you'd understand why some doors close and why some doors open. But since you can't, your best move is to trust the guide. Trust that every door, open or close, is part of His perfect plan to get you where you're meant to be. There's a tension we all wrestle with. The tension between wanting to control everything and needing to trust God with it all. We live in a culture that prizes control. Control of our schedules, control of our finances, control of our futures. But here's the truth that will set you free. Walking in control is a heavy burden, but walking in confidence is freedom. Control means you're trying to hold everything in your hands, trying to dictate every step, trying to force outcomes. It's exhausting, it's frustrating, it's faithless. Because control says, I don't trust God to handle this. Control says, I have to fix it myself. Control says if I loosen my grip, everything will fall apart. But confidence, real confidence, is different. Confidence is rooted in the character and power of God, not in your ability to micromanage life. Confidence says, God is bigger than my problems. He's sovereign over my circumstances. I can trust Him even when I don't understand. Confidence is calm in the chaos because it knows who holds the future. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. That's walking in confidence. Not leaning on what you can control, but leaning on what God controls. And submission here doesn't mean defeat, it means peace. When you try to control everything, you're basically saying, God, I don't trust you enough to step back. You hold tight, and what happens? You're bound up by fear, anxiety, and exhaustion. You become so focused on managing every detail that you miss the miracle that God is already working behind the scenes. Walking in confidence means releasing the illusion that you have to do it all. It means saying, God, I don't need to see the whole plan. I just need to know you. It means trusting that even when the path is unclear, even when the door seems closed, God is in control. And that confidence propels you forward even when fear whispers, you can't. Confidence comes from experience, seeing God come through again and again. It's not blind faith, it's tested faith. It's the kind of faith that says, I don't have to understand every detail because I have seen God's faithfulness. It's the faith that Caleb had when he said, give me that mountain. He didn't see the whole battle plan, but he knew the God who fought for him. Control tries to plan for every worst case scenario, but confidence says, I'll walk forward one step at a time, knowing God has my back. Confidence allows you to move boldly because it rests in the promise that God's got this. Even when the door is still closed, even when the road is rough. You see, walking in control is heavy because it's all on you. But walking in confidence is light because it's all on Him. Jesus said in Matthew 11:28 through 30, "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest." Rest isn't found in controlling your life. Rest is found in confidence. Confidence that God is bigger than your burden. Confidence also changes the way you face opposition. When you walk in control, opposition feels like a threat. When you walk in confidence, opposition feels like an opportunity for God's power to be displayed. You begin to see challenges not as roadblocks, but as opportunities to grow and trust God more deeply. Sometimes God calls you to take a step without knowing exactly how it's going to work out. That's when confidence is critical. You don't have to have the whole map in your hands, but you do have to have your hand in God's. You walk forward knowing that even if you don't control the outcome, you are not walking alone. Walking in confidence doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It means you choose faith over fear anyway. It means you acknowledge the unknown, but you refuse to be paralyzed by it. You keep your eyes on God, not your circumstances. And in that, you discover a peace that surpasses understanding. When you walk in control, you're living out of fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. But when you walk in confidence, you're living out of faith. Faith that God's promises are true, that His timing is perfect, that His power is enough. That kind of faith fuels boldness and resilience. The next time you find yourself trying to control every detail, remember, God's plan doesn't require you to carry it alone. He calls you to carry it with Him. You don't have to be the captain of the ship. You just have to be willing to set sail with Him as your guide. Confidence means you stop trying to manufacture the outcome and start trusting the one who already knows it. Confidence means you don't have to have all the answers. You just need to have God. You don't have to be in control to move forward. You just need to be confident that God is. True freedom comes when we release control and embrace confidence in God's sovereignty. Walking by faith means trusting His plan above our fears. Knowing He guides every step. Confidence empowers us to move forward boldly, not because we control the outcome, but because God does.